I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside my bedroom window, a gentle reminder of why I loved my grandparents' craftsman home in Seattle. Well, my home now. After they raised me when my mom died, leaving this place to me felt right. What did not feel right was how my long-absent father suddenly reappeared in my life after the inheritance, bringing along his wife Brenda and her daughter Allison. The three of them circling my property, like vultures, gave me an uneasy feeling from day one. Before I tell you how my own family tried to rob me blind, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up to family who treated you like an ATM instead of a son. My story really begins 24 years ago when my mother lost her battle with cancer. I was 8 years old, suddenly motherless, with a father who seemed more inconvenienced than heartbroken by her death. Thomas Walsh, my biological father, stuck around for exactly 3 months after the funeral, before announcing he had accepted a job in California. What he failed to mention was that he had also accepted a new wife. My maternal grandparents, Eleanor and Harold, stepped in without hesitation. They converted their home office into a bedroom for me, enrolled me in the local school, and tried their best to create stability amid my world falling apart. While my father sent occasional birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside, my grandparents were the ones attending every baseball game, helping with science projects, and sitting through parent-teacher conferences. The few times my father visited over the years, he seemed like an awkward stranger checking a box on some internal list of minimum parental duties. He would ask superficial questions about school, make vague promises about future visits, and leave earlier than planned. Eventually, the visits stopped altogether when I reached high school. Our relationship dwindled to annual Christmas calls that lasted less than 5 minutes. Meanwhile, my grandparents created a home filled with the kind of unwavering love every child deserves. They encouraged my passion for architecture, hanging my earliest building sketches on the refrigerator, and later helping me apply for college scholarships. Their modest retirement savings, combined with my part-time jobs, got me through a degree in architectural design from the University of Washington. By the time I graduated, my grandfather had developed Parkinson's disease, and I moved back home to help grandmother care for him. I converted part of the basement into a home office, where I could work on freelance projects while remaining close by. Those 3 years before his passing were difficult but precious, filled with conversations about life, love, and the craftsmanship of the very house we lived in, which he had maintained with meticulous care since purchasing it in 1972. Grandmother followed him just 4 months later. The doctors called it heart failure, but everyone who knew them understood she simply could not bear to be without him after 56 years of marriage. The double loss left me reeling, but also with a deep appreciation for what they had given me. Not just shelter, but a true home. The inheritance was straightforward. They left everything to me, including the house in the Ravenna neighborhood of Seattle. What once had been a modest, middle-class area was now becoming increasingly desirable as tech money flooded the city. Similar homes on our street were selling for nearly $700,000, though I had no intention of selling the place that contained every meaningful memory of my life. I continued building my architectural consulting business, specializing in sustainable renovations of older homes, inspired by the craftsman beauty of my own place. At 32, I was doing reasonably well with enough clients to maintain a comfortable life, if not extravagant. The mortgage had been paid off years ago through my grandparents' careful planning, which gave me financial freedom many of my peers lacked in an increasingly expensive city. Then came the call that would upend my peaceful existence. "Jesse, this is your dad." The voice on the phone sounded older, raspier than I remembered. I heard about Eleanor passing. "I am sorry, son." 6 months after her funeral, the condolences felt hollow. "Thanks," I replied, unsure what else to say to this virtual stranger. "Listen, Brenda and I are going to be in Seattle next weekend. I thought maybe we could see you catch up. It has been too long, as if our estrangement was some unfortunate accident of geography, rather than his deliberate choice. Still, curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed to dinner. That Friday evening, 3 unfamiliar faces appeared at my door. My father, now sporting gray hair and reading glasses, looked like an aged version of the man who had walked away decades ago. Beside him stood Brenda, his wife of 20-plus years, whom I had never actually met in person. She was a petite woman, with obviously dyed blonde hair, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Behind them was Allison, Brenda's daughter from a previous relationship, a sullen-looking woman in her mid-20s, who offered a limp handshake and immediately asked for my Wi-Fi password. "This place is absolutely charming," Brenda exclaimed, pushing past me into the foyer, her eyes scanning every corner. "Such character. Such history. Do you mind if I take a few photos? My book club friends would just die to see a genuine craftsman with the original woodwork still intact." Before I could answer, she was snapping pictures with her phone, cooing over the built-in bookshelves and box-beam ceilings that my grandfather had painstakingly restored over the years. My father clapped me awkwardly on the shoulder. "You landed on your feet, huh? Son, place must be worth a pretty penny these days. Eleanor and Harold did all right by you." There was something in his tone that struck me as odd, almost calculating, but I brushed it off as simple awkwardness. We had not seen each other in nearly 7 years, after all. Throughout dinner, which I had prepared in the kitchen, my grandmother had taught me to cook, and the conversation remained uncomfortably focused on the house, rather than on bridging the decades-long gap between us. My father asked pointed questions about property taxes and heating costs. Brenda wanted to know if I had considered updates to increase the value. Allison wandered off twice during the meal to explore upstairs, returning to announce that the master bedroom has amazing potential if you knocked out that wall. "It is not the master bedroom," I corrected. "It was my grandparents' room, and the wall is load-bearing." "Well, with your architecture background, surely you know workarounds for that," Brenda chirped. "This place is just wasted on one person. So much space." By the time they left, after extracting a promise from me to stay in better touch, I felt drained in a way that went beyond the normal exhaustion of hosting. Something about their interest in the house felt predatory almost. I dismissed the thought as paranoia, but the uneasy feeling lingered. Within 2 weeks, my father called again, suggesting Sunday brunch. This became a pattern increasingly frequent. Visits always at my house, always with Brenda, examining some new aspect of the property, taking measurements, suggesting renovations. Allison began to show up separately, asking to use my laundry facilities because her apartment building's machines were gross, then staying for hours, rearranging my kitchen cabinets because my organization system made no sense. During one such visit, I overheard Brenda on the phone in my backyard, speaking in hushed but excited tones. "You should see this place, Diane. The location alone is gold. With the way this neighborhood is developing, we are talking serious equity." No, he has no clue. Just sitting on a gold mine would change everything for our retirement plans. I retreated silently back into the house, a cold knot forming in my stomach. My gut instinct had been right all along. This sudden family reunion had nothing to do with reconnecting and everything to do with my inheritance. The next family dinner was when everything started to come into focus. They had invited me to their hotel restaurant this time, an unusual departure from their insistence on meeting at my house. My father seemed unusually cheerful, ordering champagne before I had even taken my seat. "We have wonderful news," Brenda announced, squeezing Allison's hand across the table. "Show him, sweetheart." Allison, beaming with uncharacteristic warmth, pulled out her phone and showed me an ultrasound image. "I am pregnant, 8 weeks along." "Congratulations," I said, genuinely surprised. Allison had never mentioned a boyfriend or partner in our limited interactions. "That is great news." "We are going to be grandparents," my father exclaimed, though Allison had no biological connection to him. "Our first grandchild. Can you believe it?" The conversation that followed centered entirely on Allison's pregnancy, and increasingly her living situation. "Her apartment is just not suitable for a baby." Brenda sighed dramatically. "1 bedroom, thin walls, and in such a questionable area. The stress alone cannot be good for the baby." My father nodded gravely. "Family needs to stick together at times like these. Support each other." The implication hung in the air. but I chose to ignore it, changing the subject to safer territory. The tactic worked only temporarily. Over dessert, Brenda touched my arm with what seemed meant to be maternal concern. "Jessie, we have been thinking. You have been so blessed with that beautiful home, more space than one person could possibly need. Have you ever considered sharing your good fortune with family?" "What do you mean?" I asked, though I knew exactly where this was heading. Well, my father interjected that house has at least 4 bedrooms. Allison needs a safe place for her and the baby. It just makes sense for her to move in with you. Temporarily, of course. The audacity was breathtaking. These virtual strangers who had shown no interest in my life until learning about my inheritance now expected me to hand over my home to accommodate a half-step relative I had met just months ago. "That is not going to work for me," I said firmly. "I use the 2nd bedroom as my office, and the 3rd is set up as a guest room. The 4th is basically storage right now. Plus, I value my privacy and independence." The warmth evaporated from the table, like morning dew, under a harsh Sunday. Allison's eyes welled with tears, while Brenda's narrowed dangerously. "I never expected my own brother to be so selfish." Allison sniffled, though we were not siblings by any definition. My father leaned forward, his voice lowered, but intensity radiating from every word. "Son, I know Eleanor and Harold raised you, but they may have given you some misguided ideas about family obligation. That house is part of your family legacy, which includes all of us. Allison is in a difficult position as a single mother-to-be. Surely your grandparents would have wanted their great-grandchild to benefit from their home." The manipulation was so transparent it almost seemed desperate. I stood my ground, explaining that while I wished Allison well with her pregnancy, I had no obligation to upend my life and home for someone I barely knew. The dinner ended with strained pleasantries and promises to talk more soon. The pressure campaign that followed was relentless. My father called daily with guilt-laden monologues about how my grandparents had interfered with our father-son relationship, supposedly turning me against him. Brenda sent links to family therapy sessions, suggesting I had an unhealthy attachment to material possessions over flesh and blood. Allison took to social media, posting vague but pointed comments about toxic family members and pregnant women in crisis. Then came the unannounced visits. I would return from client meetings to find Brenda and Allison in my driveway, claiming they had just been in the neighborhood. Once I came home to find Brenda giving a tour of my backyard to a woman she introduced as an interior design friend who specialized in nursery conversions. "We were just getting some ideas," Brenda explained breezily. "No harm in planning ahead." Another time I discovered Allison in my home office measuring the dimensions of the room. "Just seeing if my crib would fit in here," she said, without a hint of embarrassment when I asked what she was doing. "How did you get in?" I demanded. She dangled a key. Dad had a copy made. For emergencies. I changed the locks that same day and installed a security system the following week. My closest friend Marcus, who had known me since college, witnessed one of these intrusions when we returned from lunch to find my father and Brenda on my porch looking annoyed at being locked out. "Dude," Marcus whispered, as I reluctantly invited them in, "something is seriously off with your long-lost family. They are eyeing this place like vultures circling a wounded animal." He was right, and the situation was taking its toll. I began having trouble sleeping, waking to every creak in the historic house, wondering if someone was trying to enter. My work suffered as I fielded constant calls and texts, demanding my reconsideration. Finally, my father requested a formal family meeting to discuss the future. I agreed, hoping to establish firm boundaries once and for all. They arrived with a folder of documents which immediately raised my suspicions. Brenda took charge of the conversation. "We have given this a lot of thought, and we see 2 reasonable options," she began. "All business now. Option 1. You sell this house, which is clearly too large for your needs, and we split the proceeds 4 ways: you, your father, Allison, and the baby. Everyone wins." "And option 2, I asked already, knowing I would reject either proposal. "You sign over partial ownership to Allison and the baby, allowing them to live here while you relocate to something more suitable for a single man. You could find a nice condo downtown closer to your work. Again, everyone wins." I stared at them in disbelief. Those are not reasonable options. This is my home left to me by my grandparents who raised me. I am not selling it or signing over any portion of it. My father's face darkened. This house should have been at least partially mine after Eleanor died. She was my mother-in-law after all. You are being incredibly selfish, just like your mother always was. The mention of my mother, whose death he had treated as an inconvenience, ignited something within me. Get out, I said quietly. All of you. Now. You will regret this, Brenda hissed as they gathered their things. There are other ways to get what is rightfully ours. Your grandparents would be ashamed of how you have turned out. After they left, I sat in my grandfather's old armchair, shaking with anger and disbelief. How had this escalated so quickly? These people were essentially strangers, yet felt entitled to the home. My grandparents had lovingly maintained for decades the home where they had raised me when my own father abandoned his responsibilities. The following week brought disturbing discoveries. A bank statement arrived opened with several pages missing. My credit monitoring service alerted me to inquiries I had not authorized. Most alarmingly, my lawyer friend Patrick called to tell me someone had been making inquiries about the deed to my property. They asked about adding names to the title, Patrick explained. When the clerk asked for documentation, they said they would come back with the papers. Jesse, someone is trying to make a play for your house. I hired Patrick officially that day. His preliminary investigation revealed my father had visited the county records office, claiming to be checking on our family property. Patrick also advised me to install security cameras, which captured Brenda making a wax impression of my new house key, while supposedly waiting for me to return home one afternoon. The final straw came when I discovered through a mutual acquaintance that Allison had been telling friends she and her baby would soon be moving into her family home in Ravenna, describing in detail renovations she planned for my office and grandparents' bedroom. The emotional toll was immense. Beyond the practical concerns about property theft, I was devastated that my only blood relative, already guilty of childhood abandonment, would now attempt such a calculated betrayal. The house represented not just financial security, but my only connection to the people who had actually raised and loved me. The thought of these intruders desecrating that legacy with their schemes left me physically ill. With Patrick's help, I gathered evidence of their attempts to defraud me and prepared for whatever legal challenge they might attempt. I had never imagined I would need to defend myself against my own father, but it seemed the battle lines had been drawn. What I did not anticipate was just how far they would go in their desperation. I will never forget the day I returned home from a client meeting to find an unfamiliar moving truck in my driveway and the front door of my house standing wide open. For a moment, I thought I was being robbed in broad daylight. The reality was somehow worse. In my living room, Brenda was directing two movers where to place a floral-patterned sofa I had never seen before. My own furniture had been pushed against the walls or moved into the hallway. Upstairs, I could hear what sounded like power tools. What the hell is going on here? I demanded, stepping into my own home like an intruder. Brenda hardly looked surprised to see me. Oh, Jesse, we expected you back later. We are just getting Allison settled in. Could you help the movers with her dresser? It is quite heavy. Before I could respond, my father emerged from the kitchen. Had to call a locksmith to let us in since you changed the locks without telling us. Not very considerate, son. I have gone ahead and had new keys made for everyone. The casual entitlement left me momentarily speechless. From upstairs came the sound of Allison's voice directing someone to just take all his junk to the garage for now. You need to leave right now, I said, pulling out my phone. All of you. Or I am calling the police. My father approached, trying to take my phone. Do not be dramatic. We are family. We do not need to involve outsiders in a simple misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I stepped back, keeping the phone out of his reach. You are breaking and entering moving furniture into my house without permission, changing my locks. There is no misunderstanding. Brenda intervened, her voice honey sweet, but eyes cold. Jesse, sweetie, we tried to do this the easy way. Your father has legal rights to this property that you have been ignoring. Eleanor was his mother-in-law, and in Washington state, that creates certain inheritance considerations. It was complete nonsense, but delivered with such conviction that the movers exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly wondering if they had stepped into a legitimate family dispute. "That is absolutely false," I stated firmly. "I have the deed and the will. This house belongs solely to me." Allison appeared on the staircase, one hand dramatically placed on her barely visible baby bump. "Why are you being so horrible? Can you not see? I am pregnant and need stability. This house has plenty of room for all of us." "There is no us," I responded, finally dialing 911. "I am calling the police now. Anyone still here when they arrive will be charged with breaking and entering." My father lunged for my phone, but years of rock climbing had made me faster and stronger than he anticipated. I stepped back, connecting with the emergency operator, and clearly stating that intruders were in my home moving in furniture without permission. "Your own father is not an intruder," he shouted loud enough for the operator to hear. "This is family property. I have been telling the neighbors how we are helping renovate your place. Everyone knows we are expected here." That explained the lack of concerned calls from my usually vigilant neighbors. They had been fed a story that normalized the comings and goings of these people at my house. When the police arrived 12 minutes later, the situation descended into a mortifying scene. Brenda dissolved into tears, claiming they had a verbal agreement that Allison could move in. My father produced ancient photos of himself in the house during his brief marriage to my mother, trying to establish some claim. Allison sat on her newly delivered sofa, refusing to move, and playing the pregnancy card to the sympathetic female officer. Fortunately, I had my documentation ready. The deed in my name. Only my grandparents' will, leaving the property exclusively to me, and security footage, showing them using a key they should not have possessed to enter when I was not home. "Sir," the male officer said to my father after reviewing my evidence, "regardless of family relationships, this property legally belongs to Mr. Walsh here. Without written permission, you have no right to move items in change locks or occupy the space. You will need to leave immediately and take your belongings with you." "This is not over," my father hissed as the movers began reluctantly reloading Allison's furniture. "We will see you in court. I have rights you and these cops do not understand. We will file for an emergency injunction," Brenda added. "Allison and the baby will be back here by the weekend. You can enjoy your precious house for a few more days." After they finally departed with the police, ensuring they actually left the premises, I sat on my porch steps in a state of shock. The violation went beyond the physical intrusion into my home. These people who had shown no interest in me for decades felt entitled to simply take what was mine because of a tenuous family connection. True to their word, 3 days later, I was served with legal papers. My father was petitioning for partial ownership of the property, claiming he had contributed to its maintenance during his brief marriage to my mother and had been unfairly excluded from his in-laws' will. It was a preposterous claim, especially given his complete abandonment of both me and any responsibility for the property for over 20 years. But it would still require a legal defense. Patrick took the case personally, outraged at what he called one of the most blatant attempted property grabs he had seen in his career. Our preparation uncovered troubling information. My father and Brenda had significant financial problems, including a foreclosure on their California home the previous year. More disturbingly, we found court records showing Brenda had attempted similar maneuvers with property belonging to her previous husband's family. Most valuable to our case were my grandfather's meticulously kept journals, which documented my father's complete absence from my life and his refusal of multiple invitations to participate in my upbringing. One entry from when I was 12 was particularly damning. "Called Thomas again, about contributing to Jesse's braces. He claimed financial hardship, but posted photos of his new boat the same day. 15 years I worked for the electric company without missing a child's need. Cannot understand a man who abandons his son." The court date arrived with a swirl of anxiety. I had not slept well for weeks, haunted by the violation of my home and the impending confrontation. The courtroom felt unnaturally bright and formal as I took my seat beside Patrick, avoiding eye contact with my father's party across the aisle. The judge, an older woman with piercing eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, reviewed the documents before addressing us. Mr. Thomas Walsh, you are petitioning for partial ownership of the property at 1732 Ravenna Boulevard, currently deeded solely to Jesse Walsh. On what grounds do you make this claim? My father's attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, stood. Your Honor, my client maintained a relationship with the property through his marriage to the previous owner's daughter. He contributed to improvements during that period and maintained a family connection that was deliberately undermined after his wife's passing. The subsequent will, excluding him from any interest in the family property, represents an undue influence from the maternal grandparents over his son. The judge's expression remained impassive. And the fact that according to these records, Mr. Thomas Walsh has had minimal contact with either the property or his son for over 20 years. Family estrangements are complex emotional matters. Your Honor, the attorney responded smoothly, my client was effectively pushed out of his son's life, but has always maintained an interest in family reconciliation and legacy preservation. Brenda dressed conservatively, and with her hair pulled back in a modest style that did not match her usual appearance, nodded earnestly from her seat. Allison sat beside her, a picture of youthful vulnerability, in a loose-fitting dress that emphasized her pregnancy. When our turn came, Patrick methodically presented the evidence the properly executed will, my grandparents' tax records, showing they alone had maintained the property for decades, and records of my father's absence from my life, including returned child support checks my grandparents had tried to secure. The surprise came when Patrick called his final witness, a woman in her 60s I had never seen before. Please state your name for the record, the judge instructed. Catherine Linden. Formerly Catherine Walsh, the woman replied clearly. My father visibly paled. Catherine, it emerged, was his first wife before my mother. She testified that Thomas had attempted a similar property claim against her parents' lake house after their divorce, despite having visited it only twice during their marriage. It is a pattern with him, Catherine stated firmly. He believes marriage entitles him to family property, even after abandoning the actual relationships. He tried the same approach with my brother's cabin. The court dismissed that case, too. The judge listened attentively, occasionally glancing at my increasingly uncomfortable father. When all testimony concluded, she delivered her ruling with devastating clarity. This court finds no merit whatsoever in the petitioner's claims, she declared. The property in question was legally transferred to Jesse Walsh through a properly executed will. Thomas Walsh has demonstrated no legitimate interest in the property, or frankly in his son's welfare for the majority of the young man's life. She turned her stern gaze directly to my father. Sir, I find your attempt to claim this property not just legally baseless, but morally questionable. This appears to be an opportunistic grasp at a valuable asset rather than any genuine family reconciliation. To my additional relief, she granted the restraining order Patrick had counterfiled legally, barring my father, Brenda, and Allison from coming within 100 feet of my home for at least 6 months. As we exited the courtroom, my father's face was contorted with rage. In the hallway away from the judge's presence, he unleashed his fury. You think you have won. This is not over. That house should have been part of my inheritance too. Your mother would be disgusted by how selfish you turned out. For the first time, I felt no pain at his words, only a calm certainty. No, she would be disappointed that the man she married valued property over his own son. You had 24 years to be my father. You chose not to. You do not get to claim family when it is financially convenient. Brenda attempted to approach me, but the bailiff stepped between us, reminding them of the newly issued restraining order. As they were escorted toward a different exit, I watched the three of them huddled together, already arguing among themselves. In that moment, I realized they had never really seen me as family at all. I was simply an obstacle to acquiring a valuable asset. 2 weeks later, they made one final attempt, showing up at my house, despite the restraining order. Through the security camera intercom, I watched my father's desperate final plea. Jesse, be reasonable. We are blood. That has to count for something. Allison needs this place for her future. Your future niece or nephew deserves a good start in life. From the safety of my doorway with neighbors witnessing the confrontation, I delivered my final statement on the matter. Family is not about blood or legal technicalities. It is about who shows up, who cares, who puts in the work of loving someone every day. My grandparents were my real family. They earned that through actions, not biology. You are just someone who shares my DNA and covets my home. There is a difference. I called the police to enforce the restraining order, watching from my porch as the patrol car arrived. As they were being escorted back to their rental car, the look on my father's face finally shifted from anger to something like recognition. Perhaps at long last he understood what he had thrown away was worth far more than any property. The aftermath of the court case brought unexpected developments. Through Patrick's legal contacts, I learned that my father and Brenda had separated within 2 months of their failed property scheme. Apparently, the financial strain and public embarrassment had fractured whatever connection they had. More surprisingly, a mutual acquaintance revealed that Allison had never actually been pregnant. The ultrasound image she had shown me belonged to her friend, borrowed to strengthen their claim on my house. The revelation should have angered me, but instead it only deepened my pity for people so morally adrift they would fake a pregnancy for financial gain. There were legal consequences beyond the restraining order. The unauthorized credit inquiries and attempted deed changes led to an investigation for attempted fraud. My father and Brenda each received probation and community service, a relatively light punishment that nonetheless created a permanent record of their actions. 6 months after our court appearance, I received an email from my father. No apology, just a request for money to help with temporary difficulties. The message confirmed what I had finally accepted. He saw me only as a resource, never as a son, worthy of genuine love and respect. I did not respond. Some doors once closed should remain so for your own well-being. The process of healing from this betrayal was neither quick nor linear. I alternated between rage at their entitlement grief for the father relationship I never had, and guilt over whether I could have handled things differently. Therapy helped me recognize that my father's failings were never my responsibility to fix, and that maintaining boundaries was not the same as being unforgiving. Reclaiming my home became part of the healing process. I repainted rooms, rearranged furniture, and finally renovated the kitchen in the way my grandmother had always wanted, with the farmhouse sink she had admired in magazines. Each change helped erase the lingering violation of finding strangers rearranging my space. The most meaningful project was converting the smallest bedroom into a memory room honoring my grandparents. I displayed their photographs, my grandfather's woodworking tools, my grandmother's recipe collection, and other treasured mementos. It became my favorite place to sit with my morning coffee, surrounded by reminders of what real family love looks like. My circle of friends who had stood firmly beside me through the ordeal became even more important. Marcus organized monthly poker nights that evolved into a tight-knit support group of guys who showed up for each other through various life challenges. My neighbor Ella, who had witnessed the final confrontation from her porch, began inviting me to her family dinners, eventually introducing me to her book club and expanding my social circle further. Seeking a way to channel my experience into something positive, I began volunteering with a mentoring program for boys without fathers. Twice monthly, I taught basic carpentry skills to kids, using my grandfather's carefully preserved tools. Watching their pride in creating something tangible helped heal parts of me that still carried the wound of paternal rejection. 8 months after the court case, a letter arrived with a California postmark. Unlike the demanding email from my father, this envelope contained a handwritten note from Allison. Jesse, I am writing to apologize for my role in what happened last year. There is no excuse for what we did, but you should know that it was primarily driven by Brenda. She has a history of targeting properties and using people to get what she wants. I let myself be manipulated and made choices I deeply regret, including the fake pregnancy. Your home was never ours to take, and I am truly sorry for the violation and pain we caused. I do not expect or deserve forgiveness, but wanted you to know that at least one person from that disaster recognizes the wrong that was done to you. The letter concluded with information that my father and Brenda had attempted a similar scheme with Brenda's elderly aunt, resulting in their complete estrangement from that side of the family as well. While I appreciated Allison's apology, I maintained my distance, responding with a brief acknowledgement, but establishing no ongoing contact. An unexpected silver lining emerged when my immediate neighbors concerned after witnessing the confrontation formed a more active community watch. Our previously friendly, but somewhat distant neighborhood became more closely connected with regular block gatherings that fostered a sense of community I had not experienced since childhood. Then came perhaps the strangest twist, a letter from an attorney representing the estate of my great-aunt Judith, my maternal grandmother's sister. I had met her only twice as a child, but apparently had made an impression. She had left me a modest inheritance, stating in her will that she wished to support Eleanor's grandson, who by all accounts has become the kind of thoughtful young man our family values. This final affirmation from my maternal family side felt like a closing of a circle, a reminder that my true lineage was one of care and integrity, not opportunism. With a portion of this unexpected inheritance, I established a small scholarship at my former high school for students who had overcome family adversity. I named it after my grandparents, ensuring their legacy of support would continue beyond their lifetime and mine. As I approach the one-year anniversary of the court case, I find myself reflecting on the hard-earned wisdom this ordeal has provided. True family has nothing to do with legal definitions or DNA, and everything to do with who shows up consistently with love and respect. The people who deserve space in your life demonstrate it through actions, not demands or manipulation. Setting boundaries is not selfish, but necessary for well-being. My grandfather once told me, "Fences make good neighbors, and clear expectations make good relationships." I finally understand the full meaning of his words. Perhaps most importantly, I have learned that homes are not just physical structures, but vessels for the love we choose to cultivate within them. My house remains valuable real estate in a desirable neighborhood, but its true worth lies in the memories it holds and the sanctuary it provides. Last weekend I hosted the first of what I hope will become regular gatherings inviting neighbors, friends, and my mentoring program, kids, for a backyard barbecue using my grandfather's meticulously maintained grill. Looking around at these people who choose to be in my life, who give without expecting property deeds in return, I felt a profound sense of peace. The family we create through love and respect will always be more meaningful than the family we happen to be born into. My house stands as testimony to that truth, sheltering not just me, but the legacy of those who understood what family really means. What about you? Have you ever had to protect yourself from family members who felt entitled to what was yours? Drop your experiences in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Share with someone who might need reassurance that setting boundaries with toxic family is not just okay, but sometimes necessary. Thank you for listening, and remember that creating your own definition of family might be the most important foundation you will ever build.